In a world where magic exists, there are 4 continents, 20 nations, and various species. In Rondel, after the era of myths and swords, the current Rondel is said to be in the age of magic, having developed magic extensively. However, despite the advanced magic civilization, the political system remains a feudal one, with kings and nobles, which means classism still exists. Nevertheless, this current age of magic is known as the Golden Age of Rondel. Also, on December 29, 1999, in the Magic Century, the day before the new century arrived, the will of an archmage named Manuel Lucas was revealed, turning the world upside down. The old man informed everyone that he had hidden power, knowledge, and wealth somewhere in the world, and those who desired it could claim their ownerless fate. Manuel Lucas, the archmage who ushered Rondel into the golden age of the Magic Century and an archduke of the Bring-Up Empire, held the title of the Ninth Circle Lord Wizard. Upon hearing Archmage Lucas's message, citizens from various backgrounds set out on a quest to possess his legacy. Just like that, those who desired to find Lucas's fate embarked on their journeys, and numerous rumors spread. Some said Lucas's dungeon lay in the barren land of the dragons, while others believed his assets were hidden in the allied nations of Elysia, known for being a tax haven. There were even rumors of Lucas's sky fortress in the Sea of Storms, the center of the world. Regardless of their nationality, species, or social rank, everyone sought Archduke Manuel Lucas's fate. However, rumors remained mere rumors, and despite countless investigations, no one found a single clue. 20 years passed, and the mystery persisted. One day, a man found himself sweating as the system in front of him confirmed that he had acquired Manuel Lucas's fate. He felt a surge of excitement at this revelation. At the year 2007 of the Magic Century, at Lawrence Castle, the butler inquired of their young master, Adrian, if he intended to resume his studies. Adrian replied in the affirmative, stating that he planned to return the books he had read. The butler suggested he could have someone else handle it, but Adrian expressed his desire to find a specific book, so he would do it himself. Our protagonist's name is Adrian Lawrence, the second son of Viscount Lawrence. Adrian was reincarnated and retained memories of his past life. He remembered that nothing eventful had occurred in the last moments of his previous life. He had died in a truck rollover accident while serving in the military, with just 1 month left until discharge. When he opened his eyes, he had been transported from the Republic of South Korea to the Reinhardt Kingdom, going from Kim Mingi to Adrian Lawrence. Coming from an ordinary middle-class family, he began a new life as the second son of a Viscount's family who owned an estate. Although he felt confused and distressed at the beginning of his reincarnation, his past life experiences became a significant advantage in his new life. While other children his age played without much thought, he was passionate about learning, starting earlier than his peers. The teacher told his father that it was his first time seeing someone so outstanding at learning. He thanked his teacher, thinking that he was able to successfully receive recognition from those around him and fulfill his father's expectations all at once. However, if he had to say one disappointing thing, it was all gone for him. He knows that Rondel was a world with a more advanced civilization than 21st century Earth. Due to this, his knowledge from his previous world wasn't of much help. So, he knows that what he can do in that situation is continuously strive to increase his value and keep acting like a genius. However, life isn't easy enough to be cruised through with effort alone. When he was 7 years old, someone attempted to poison him. His doctor told his maid that he was really fortunate because if they had taken action just a little bit later, he would have died, making the maid ask who did it. But he knows that the culprit was obvious. Then the woman told him that he didn't know how worried she was. He panicky looked at the woman, and the official wife of the Lawrence family, Anna Lawrence, asked him if he was alright. He knows that to that woman, who was of high birth, the fact that he, who is of common birth and therefore not her child, caught his father's eyes was enough to make Anna uncomfortable. He furiously punched the wall while wondering, so what if that world is so developed when the country's political system is so backward? He knows that convicting Anna without any background is impossible, making him wonder why his father isn't reacting when there is no way his father doesn't know that Anna is the prime suspect. But then he realizes that his father is turning a blind eye and playing dumb even though he knows. Ever since then, he stopped acting like a genius, and about 10 years later, in the magical century of May 1st, 2019, the store clerk welcomed him to Pod Convenience Store. He, now 20 years old, smiled as he looked around. The man asked his coworker if she knew him and if he was a celebrity, but the woman told him to be quiet and explained that he is the second young master of the Lawrence family. The man was shocked to hear it and asked his coworker if it was Adrian from the Lawrence family. Shouldn't he be one of the lords of that area? The man was about to tell his coworker that Adrian's outfit wasn't much different from a normal commoner's, but then the woman silenced him because Adrian asked them. The woman asked Adrian how she could help him. He told her that he didn't see any online point cards, and she told him that their policy had changed, so point cards can only be purchased at the checkout counter. Then she asked him how much he wanted, and he replied that he wanted all of them. After that, he left, and the clerks thanked him for the purchase. The woman angrily asked her coworker if he could get himself together and if he didn't know that if he lost a noble's favor, he could be punished. The man apologized to her and told her that Adrian could have told his servant to do it, so he was just wondering why Adrian came to the convenience store himself. But the woman asked her coworker how would she know and told him that she was extremely scared when she first saw him too. The man asks her if Adrian comes often, and she replies that Adrian comes twice or thrice a month. Also, as he can see, it seems like Adrian is very into games. Adrian looked at his 5 million loot worth of game point cards, and he knew that in Korean won, it'd be around 5 million won. Then his guard told him that they received a call that their young master Cedric is visiting his abode, making him shocked and pissed. A moment later, Adrian's mother, Sylvia Lawrence, worriedly says that he arrived, and he hugged his mother while asking about his brother. But then Adrian's half-brother, Cedric Lawrence, who was 23 years old, angrily and shoutingly asked him if he was walking around the estate without a vehicle and if he was in his right mind, making him annoyed and his mother fearful. Cedric told him that if he was the child of a noble, he should think about the family prestige. But he knows that Cedric was always playing around with girls and thinks that if Cedric had not been a noble, he wouldn't even be able to take care of himself. But he also knows that if he talks back, it will just last longer, so he'll just withdraw and told Cedric that he was short-sighted, and he'll make sure to mind it next time. Cedric told him that in any case, being a commoner mixed blood isn't something to be proud of. He asked Cedric what brought him there, and Cedric replied that it seemed like their father was planning to make him take over a business called Far's Distribution, so he must have heard about it too. He knows that by Earth standards, Rondel's noble families are a powerful combination of conglomerates and politicians. Accordingly, those nobles are engaged in various businesses, and Far's Distribution is the money source from the mining industry, one among the businesses run by the Lawrence family. He now knows the reason why Cedric suddenly barged in there, so he tells Cedric that he understands, and he'll refuse. Cedric told him that, as he expected, he understood well. He told Cedric that if he was done with his business, he should return because he paid a lot of money to play games. Cedric tried to hold his laugh, but in the end, laughed loudly and told him that he should just do what he's doing. Sylvia asked him if he was alright, and he replied that he was. Then, he told his mother that not getting involved is the best course of action. After the attempted poisoning incident, he abandoned his image as a genius and isolated himself by minimizing his interactions with his vassals. He thinks that perhaps it was because his father wasn't interested in the son of a concubine who wasn't a genius. His father became indifferent to him. Thanks to his father's attitude, he never encountered life-threatening situations again. Just like that, he lived for 10 years while trying to erase his presence. As soon as he graduated from the academy, he left the castle with his mother. However, most of the servants working there were under the influence of the official wife, Anna, so he couldn't even speak freely in his own home. He overheard one of the maids teasingly telling others that Adrian was desperate and running away from reality. He silently continued walking and entered his room. Inside his room, he grabbed the game gadget from the table. He wondered if he was using games as a way to escape from reality. The game indicated that he had accessed the Chronicle online. He smiled, knowing that there's no way. The system showed him that he had cleared stage 1 of the Fate quest. It analyzed his character and indicated that it had synchronized his character with his real-life body. He proudly stated that if you wanted to monitor someone, they should also do it in the virtual world. Then, the system warned him that abilities in Chronicle Online would have an impact in reality. 10 years ago, when he was enrolled at the Royal Academy, he researched Manuel Lucas for his assignment. He discovered something unexpected when he saw Lucas's family crest. No matter how he looked at it, it resembled an English word, making him wonder how English could exist in that world. He guessed that maybe Manuel Lucas was from Earth too, but he told himself he couldn't come to a conclusion with just that. It might simply be a coincidence. However, it wasn't long before he could confirm that Archduke Lucas was indeed from Earth. He saw that Archduke Lucas had said those words before his death, expressing a desire to walk the California beach with Mary once again. Although he wasn't familiar with the place names as they were names he had never heard of before, it was the story of a great man, and he couldn't ignore it. He recorded the Archduke's last message and noticed that those names were also written in the records of the butler who was by Lucas's side until the end of his life. This led him to conclude that it wasn't a coincidence and that the great Archmage of Rondel was an Earthling like him. After becoming convinced, he investigated Manuel Lucas further, and evidence confirming that Lucas was an Earthling poured in from all directions. He used his knowledge of Earth from his previous life to trace the path that Lucas had left behind. In the end, he acquired Manuel Lucas's legacy, which filled him with excitement. He thought he could now walk on a path of flowers, but then something attacked him from behind, confirming his fears. A sword hit the wall behind him, causing excruciating pain, and he realized that after obtaining the legacy, true suffering had just begun. He wondered if he could properly fight against this newfound threat out of fear. Archmage Lucas's legacy was hidden in an unexpected location. It was online, inside a virtual world. He believed that even if this virtual world was meticulously designed to resemble reality, it was still just a game, and pain should generally be filtered out. However, he felt the pain in real life and had to struggle every time he fought. He also considered that the idea of the legacy acquirer becoming synchronized in-game and in real life seemed like an impossible story that no one would believe. As a goblin swung its weapon to attack him, he dodged it and swiftly stabbed the goblin in the face with his sword, dealing a critical hit. The system indicated that he had leveled up to level 10 and had cleared stage 1 of the Fate quest, healing him in the process. It also informed him that he could change jobs at this level. Then, he found himself somewhere different, as the system informed him that he had been moved to a secret space by the main god Ariel. The system started to initialize his character and synchronize his character with his real body, allowing his abilities in Chronicle Online to reflect in reality. He couldn't help but curse in frustration because it took longer than he expected due to synchronization. A door appeared behind him, and the system asked if he would like to go to the second floor of the magic tower of Manuel Lucas. He walked toward the door and replied with a resounding yes. Upon emerging from the door, he found himself in a library, which was unlike the first floor where there was nothing. Then he saw that the bookshelf was packed with books and wondered if the chest in front of him was a treasure chest. Then the system showed him that he had acquired 5 billion loot, which was in Rondel's currency unit, 5 billion won, and told him to enter the account to receive the deposit. Also, if he wants, he may also receive it as online currency, but he is just glad that finally, he gets a reward and feels like a reward has appeared. He grabbed his rewards while thinking that although it was a shame that he couldn't get that much money, the system showed him that he had created one circle, and as per the circle creation, he had been bestowed the mage job. Also, a circle has been created on the synchronized body in real life, and he knows that the true value of fate isn't money, but that to begin with. Then the system told him not to quit the game because a synchronized body will take a huge hit if forced to quit. While the circle was forming at him, he was thinking that up until then, he thought the mana points displayed with health points were just mana, but he had never felt the presence of mana in real life. Then the system showed him that circle creation had been completed, making him feel the presence of mana circulating in his chest. He knows that it wasn't an easy process, but he figured out that it was the true power of fate, synchronization between the game and real life. He thinks that since one circle has been created, he wonders if he can't learn a technique that suits it because he was sure that those books are part of Lucas's will too. But when he is about to get a book, the system warned him and asked him if he would like to look up some materials, making him think that it was so convenient because he noticed that there are quite a lot of books. So, he was wondering about when he'd be able to look through all of them. But he expected it from the best mage of humanity, Manuel Lucas. A moment later, he was leaning on the bookshelf in pain because he felt a huge headache. He thinks it is convenient to learn skills and magic just by touching the skill book like in games, but the process of engraving the principles into his head is unpleasant and painful. But he endures it and holds a book knowing that it is the last one. Then the system told him that it was a circle concealment technique book that hid circles and possessed mana and was useless against Aura Master level knights, mages above the 7th circle, and top level detection artifacts. He knows that it's the skill he needs the most, and it's as if they know his circumstance. Then he acquired it. Then he felt dizzy and another huge headache in his head. He felt his surroundings move because of it and slowly fell, but he just laughed and thought that he hoped for nothing much through Manuel Lucas's fate. He was on the floor knowing that he barely took one step forward and there were a lot of things to do in the future. Also, he just wants his mother and him to live comfortably without any problems, so he swears that he is going to do everything for it. The next day, at the mansion's training hall, the trusted friend and guard knight, Vice, told him that he had more stamina than he thought. He asked Vice if he really did, and Vice honestly admitted that he was a bit surprised when he expressed his desire to improve his swordsmanship. He mentioned that he had been feeling a bit sluggish lately and thought some exercise would do him good. But the truth was, he knew it would also help in the game, as his in-game character's abilities were synchronized with his real-life self. Besides, he could feel his mana and stamina improving, and it seemed that his enhanced in-game stats also affected his real-life abilities. In simple terms, the skills he honed in the game could be applied in real life. He smiled, realizing that he had resolved the mana circle issue with the help of the concealment skill he had learned at Lucas' magic tower. Vice noticed his smile and asked if something good had happened, making him wonder if he seemed too excited. He replied that he had acquired a valuable item in the game. People around them whispered, as they had suspected he was a gaming enthusiast, and they considered Vice to be quite a fanatic too. Some questioned why Vice was trying to impress a seemingly powerless and pitiful human. Vice became angry, but he stopped him and told him not to pay attention to them. He appreciated Vice standing up for him, although he knew it was all an act. He needed to appear insignificant to avoid drawing the attention of Anna and Cedric, and being ignored as a worthless individual was currently the best situation for him. A minute later, he logged into the game, and Chronicle Online warmly greeted him. He realized that now that he had confirmed that his stats were indeed affecting his real-life abilities, he knew what he needed most to earn more money and enhance his abilities. It was time to spend, and he recalled someone saying that the most crucial aspect of a game was the power of one's wallet. The system loaded the store product list for him. First, he bought the experience increase with a requirement of below level 100, which boosted experience acquisition by 30% for 24 hours, costing 500 kits. Then, he acquired the Goddess's Blessing with a requirement of below level 100, increasing all stats by 30% for 24 hours, also for 500 kits. Lastly, he purchased Goddess's Protection with a requirement of below level 100. Granting immunity from attacks once for 1,000 kits. He realized that it would have been great to buy these items earlier, but he needed to reach at least level 10 to access the cash shop. He also decided to get a summon supporter, which he believed would be the main event of the day. It cost 500 kits for a one-time use and 4,500 kits for 10 uses. Despite knowing that having a tank would reduce some of the experience points he needed to level up due to aggro, especially when playing in a party, he deemed it a worthy investment. He chose the highest grade warrior to be his tank, regardless of the cost. The system presented him with the option to summon a supporter 10 times for 4,500 kits, and he decided to go for it, explaining that he had both the money and determination to do so. The system then revealed a random summon class supporter. A moment later, he noticed that the chances were similar to those in low-quality Korean games. He put in 30 million won but got no supporters that he liked. Then he saw an interesting one, Arsha the Heavenly Steel female. She specialized in defense and wore a protective shield called the Shield of God. It was his first time hearing about this supporter, making him wonder if she was a new character. On top of that, he noticed that at level 25, she was the best even among the unique tier. He was glad that a useful supporter had finally come out. He registered her, but the system showed him that once registered as a supporter, changes couldn't be made. It asked if he really wanted to register her, making him confused. But he still registered Arsha the Heavenly Steel as his supporter. He looked at her and noticed that her expressionless face looked like a golem with the outer appearance of a human. But he thought it didn't matter. He asked her if they should go level up. A moment later, she tanked the golems while he attacked them with his magic missile. He stopped when the system showed him that he had reached level 20 and asked if he would like to check out the technique books and magic books that he had acquired. This made him happy because the hunt was going very comfortably with a tanker supporter. He sat behind the tree, thinking that even if it took some of his experience points, he didn't feel like he was at a loss at all. Although it would be a pity since the higher the level, the more experience the supporter would need. The system warned him that he had been playing the game for 15 hours without a break in real time and begged him to log out of the game and take a break. He wondered if it wasn't more difficult than practicing magic in real life, then he logged out. He stretched his body while saying that today was rewarding and planned to take a short break and go to the training hall. But then he noticed someone at his side and was shocked to see his supporter standing and looking at him. He panicky looked at her expressionless face and asked her who the hell she was. She replied that she was his support. He told her that it was not what he was asking and that he was asking how she came out of the game. She replied that she understood it now and he must be curious about how she maintained her substance in reality, to which he agreed. While noticing that seeing how she can make a precise distinction between reality and the game, it seems like she understands her situation properly. She told him that she was a homunculus, an android, and her creator was Manuel Lucas. As predetermined by her master, her appearance and combat characteristics are that of Arsha of Heavenly Steel. He told her that in other words, she is one of Lucas' legacies, to which she replied yes. He frustratingly thinks that if he knew it would happen, he wouldn't have chosen that tanking supporter, but he knows that something a little more versatile. He was not being picky because he didn't want her, but if it's something like that, the system should have let him know in advance and asked her if her stats were the same as in the game. She replied yes and told him that the restricted stats will be recovered as his level in Chronicles Online increased, and functionally, she thinks her maximum stats were comparable to that of a Grand Master, making him shocked. Knowing that when the knight rankings are divided into 9 classes, it'd be equal to the 8th class, and the Grand Master is the same rank as an 8th Circle Mage. Also, it was on par with the continent's strongest, and even in the Reinhardt Kingdom, the highest ranked mage is at the 7th class, and there are only 8 mages in the 8th class in that world. He wonders if Manuel Lucas created a monster of that level and thinks that at any rate, it was helpful to have trustworthy and incredible ally who only listens to his orders. The problem was, he wondered how he was going to hide her. He asked her where she was before she was summoned there and what about reverse summoning. She replied that she was stored in a standby state in a maintenance warehouse located in Everhill, a holy city, and she was then transmitted by the Lucky Encounter management server. Then she told him that transmission is only possible at the time of initial shipment, so after it, if she wants to return to the maintenance warehouse, she has to go herself. He asked her if there was a stealth or magic concealment function, and she replied that since she was in the warrior class, there was no stealth function, but mana concealment was possible. Then he ordered her to try it, and she obeyed him straight away. Then he noticed that the protective shield covering her armor disappeared along with the mana, and fortunately, like him, she has the mana concealment skill, so she won't be discovered by the knights. He said that there was no helping it, making her confused, and told her that his impression was already the worst anyway. A moment later, the people outside the mansion whisperingly ask if they heard the rumors that Adrian is now openly inviting a woman into the mansion, and the others reply that he heard it too. They say the maids caught him in the room with a woman. Also, they heard that they go everywhere together and think that Adrian must be the most shameless person in the world. His mother asks him when he is going to get married and tells him that she doesn't mind if his girlfriend is a commoner, while Vice is shocked that he has already become an adult. He is shocked to see that he reached level 30 in his Lucky Encounter quest stage 2 with the condition of defeating the orc warrior, Kance, and a reward to unlock Manuel Lucas' magic tower 3rd floor. He thinks if he plays the role of an immature young master who brings a strange woman into his mansion, no one will suspect Arsha, although his mother's reaction is quite embarrassing. Then he asks Arsha what happens to her real-life body when she is connected to the game. She replied that it'll be switched to eco mode, so it's like her taking a break. However, her monitoring function is in operation for his protection. He asks her if it means if there is a problem outside, she can let him know or respond right away, and she replies yes while looking at their side. Suddenly, a loud growling sound can be heard, and Arsha shields him while he asks her if it has begun, to which she replies yes while a huge monster is walking closer to them. The orc warrior, Kance, with health points of 5,500, glared at them, and the Fate Quest Stage 2 defeated orc warrior, Kance, started. Kance called him human and told him that he could become special if he got rid of him. Then the system warned him that using consumable attack items such as bombs and scrolls is impossible, making him notice that the use of items that make hunting easier is prohibited. He asks Manuel Lucas if he wants to raise his disciple to be strong. He called Arsha, knowing that it won't be easy to beat that guy. Kance swung his sword forward while telling him to die, but the sword hit Arsha's shield and made Kance bounce back a little because of the force, making Kance shocked and confused. Then he aimed at Kance and attacked Kance's eye using his magic missile. The system showed him that his attack crit, and Kance's health points decreased to 4,300 while slowly falling. He was thankful that he covered his entire body with high-quality equipment because the power of his magic missile had surpassed that of a first circle. He thought that if it was a monster of the same level, he could easily one-shot one kill. But then he heard a sound to his side, and Kance attacked him. Fortunately, Arsha blocked it in time with her shield. He says that it was crazy and notices that despite Kance's absurd health points, Kance is clearly critically wounded. He asks if Kance is abnormally tough while Kance continuously hits Arsha's shield. He knows that he will die if Kance hits him even once, and he is glad that Arsha is there with him. Also, it would be a lie if he said he wasn't nervous with an enemy charging at him with that kind of force. He knows that he already died once. Then he activated his magic dig, which means earth digging magic, and made Kance trip and fall hard on the ground while he thought that at that level, there was no way he was letting his fear cloud his judgment. Then he ordered Arsha not to let Kance get up while he was attacking him, to which she replied yes. He continuously attacked Kance, who had 3,900 health points, with his magic missile until Kance stood up with 50 health points. He teasingly told Kance that he was persistently making Kance angrier, and launched his sword once again. But he just aimed his finger toward Kance and told him that it would have been better to put the sword down and act out some ground techniques. Then he activated his power and used his magic missile once again, which defeated the orc warrior, Kance. The system showed him that he had cleared Fate Quest Stage 2, and the conditions for opening the next area of the magic tower had been met, so Manuel Lucas' magic tower's 3rd floor has been opened. At the same time, in Viscount Lawrence's office, his father was silently looking out of the window. Anna asked him what he was thinking about. Viscount Lawrence and Adrian's father, Rayford Lawrence, looked at Anna silently. She told him that it was late at night and he was all by himself. Then she asked him if it was because of the news that Adrian brought a commoner woman into the mansion. Rayford called her name and simply gave her an envelope. In it, she read a convocation order of local forces that says the possibility of war against the Croixan Empire increases. The troops from each territory are gathered to form local forces, and Viscount Lawrence will join the Western Command with 5 vanguards, 50 knights, and 1,000 soldiers. She asked him if he was planning on sending Cedric to battle, but he just kept silent. Then Anna begged him to send Adrian because Adrian just plays the game every day at the mansion. She told him that as a member of the Lawrence family, Adrian should act his part sometimes, but he just asked her if she is going to summon and use Adrian when it's necessary after leaving Adrian alone all that time. She told him that it was what Adrian wanted himself and that up until now, Adrian enjoyed the rights of nobility to the fullest. But he just asked her if it was really what she thought, and she asked him back what he wanted to say. But he just silently glared at her for a moment and told her that Cedric is the successor of the territory, and he will make sure that she and his father-in-law will not be bothered by anything from now on. So she should just follow his decision this time, making her angry and silent. Then Rayford told her that, as she said, he would send Adrian to the battlefield this time. However, when Adrian returns, he will make Adrian completely independent, and he hopes that Adrian and Sylvia will not be put in danger in the future, which includes any surveillance and secret investigations. He asks her if it should be enough and tells her to stop now and let Adrian be free. Vice happily told Adrian that his physical strength had improved dramatically thanks to his consistent training over the past few days. He couldn't believe he was improving that quickly. Then he told him that if he had worked that hard since he was a teenager, he would have become a great man. But he just smiled, knowing that, of course, his skills have improved since he's already level 30 and have reached stage 2 of the Fate quest. Then he remembers that the reward of that Fate quest was quite satisfactory as well because on top of receiving a lot of money and forming his second circle, he even gained a subspace. It was like the inventory in the game, he now had his own treasure chest to hide necessary items. So if he takes good advantage of it, besides simple storage, he can use it for other things too. He thinks the fact that the stats in the game are reflected in reality, depending on his effort. He can become a mage while possessing physical abilities comparable to that of a knight. And if he can completely absorb the stats received from Fate, he may even become a more fearsome monster than Archmage Lucas. Then he told Vice that now he had finished resting, they should continue, but then the other knight called him to tell him that their lordship had summoned him to the castle. A few days later, at Lawrence's castle, he was thinking about why his father called him. Cedric, in an angry tone, asked their father why Adrian was representing their family on the battlefield. Rayford explained to Cedric that he is the sole heir of their family, so he couldn't allow him to be on that dangerous battlefield. Sylvia inquired if Rayford was implying that Adrian wasn't as important as Cedric. Rayford replied that there's a difference in Adrian's value compared to the family heir. Adrian couldn't believe that Rayford had really called him in to say this, and it was making him quite upset. However, he also thought that it wasn't all bad for him. Anyone could enter the game with the headgear, and since he was a substitute for the heir, no one would interfere with him. More importantly, once he got out of there, he could escape Anna's watchful eyes. So, he told Rayford that he understood and would participate as a representative of their family. Rayford thanked him, but Cedric issued a threat, saying he wouldn't say more since it was their father's decision. However, he warned that he wouldn't sit back if Adrian defamed their family, finding it somewhat amusing that Cedric was saying this to his younger brother who was going to war for him. Adrian also wondered why Cedric was acting so immature, guessing that they had gone a long way from each other. He assured them that he would try his best, but then his father called him over and asked if they could talk privately. A minute later, they arrived at the bridge, and Adrian wondered if Rayford had something private to discuss since Rayford had asked his guard to leave. He inquired about the topic of the conversation, and Rayford mentioned that if the situation on the battlefield went well, he would relocate him and Sylvia to the King's Land. He added that Adrian should consider it a reward for going instead of Cedric, allowing him to do as he pleased without interference. Adrian knew that Anna didn't like him out of her sight, making him question if she had agreed to this. Therefore, he couldn't entirely trust Rayford yet. He told his father that he understood but needed to think about it. Rayford acknowledged Adrian's lack of trust, and he tells Rayford that he needed to come back alive from the battle to really think about it. Rayford sighed and get something from under his coat, leaving Adrian to wonder what it could be. Rayford gave it to him and explained that it was artifacts with a 5th class auto shield and a 7th class great shield, which would be helpful since the battlefield doesn't allow teleportation. He was surprised to see it, knowing that those are extremely valuable, and thanked Rayford. Then his father told him that he would have to stay conscious to survive. But then, he felt someone glaring at him from inside and saw an angry Cedric and teasingly smiling Anna. He smiled back, knowing that, of course, they were watching him, and called them obnoxious in his head. Rayford looked at them too while telling him not to worry about Sylvia and to take it easy. He remembered that when someone had tried to poison him at the age of 7, his father's response was disappointing, and his father disappointed him multiple times afterward. But surrounded by enemies, the only one he could trust right now was his father. He told Rayford that, of course, he would trust him, making Rayford surprised, and he agreed. A moment later, Rayford was in his room alone and felt a huge headache. Then he used his pain mitigation magic and felt a little relieved thanks to it. After regaining his composure, he stood up and thought that he knew Adrian had been acting differently ever since the poisoning incident. Meanwhile, in Adrian's mansion, a woman could be heard crying, and he told his mother not to worry too much because she knew that he could take care of himself. But Sylvia still worriedly asked him what if they hurt him after bringing him to the battle. However, she was shocked to hear him tell her that it was good for him and that it's better to have more crimes on their name to get rid of them. Sylvia asked him what he meant and what if someone heard them. But he assured her not to worry because Arsha was on guard at the door. He told his mother that he was not just taking hits anymore because it's almost over and asked her to wait a little longer. 2 days later, on Lawrence Army's dispatch day, the staff, including Harmon, nervously asked him who that lady was. He asked Harmon back if he didn't know Arsha. Harmon told him that he had heard about their relationship but was unsure about bringing his lover to a possible battlefield. Inside the levitation train's conference room, he told everyone that he wouldn't discuss Arsha further, so they should think of her as his secretary. Harmon replied that if he insisted, he understood. He knows that he can't leave Arsha behind, and she will save him with her life if things turn out badly, especially because Arsha leveled up so much recently and her stats are close to an official knight. One thing to prepare before the battle is enchanting himself for survival. He spent 200 million in 2 days in the game and cleared the 3rd level of a lucky encounter with money. Now he was right before the 4th level, and the rewards for the 3rd level were costing 100 billion each. The almighty cure, 3 bottles of elixirs. Currently, the elixirs are sitting nicely in his dimension pocket, and he knows that it's the perfect reward for his situation. Then he figured out that he couldn't waste any more time because the 4th level was waiting. So, he told everyone that he would be resting in his room, so they should message him if there was anything. Harmon asked him what he meant by message, and he replied that he was going to play more games. Harmon was shocked to hear it, but he just asked him if there was a problem. Then, someone angrily said that the rumors were true, making Harmon worriedly call the man Sir Dalton. He notices that Dalton is a vanguard, and a vanguard is a special force armed with force armor and a force sword. They are the center of the war and are prioritized when raiding a nation's military strength. Dalton teasingly asks him if he is sure about it because he will be seen as an incompetent commander. He tells him that his reputation isn't really good already, and he brought a girl to battle, but he was going to play a game. Dalton also told him that he understood the girl part since Arsha was pretty. Then a man called Dalton and glaringly told him to watch his mouth, making Dalton shocked in fear. A vanguard and vice leader of the Knights, Billiam, apologizes to him because his underling overstepped his boundary. He tells him that long travel like it requires a sideshow. He noticed that Billiam had a cold look different from his speech. Then Billiam told everyone that there was no reason for the Lord's deputy to care about the underling's opinion, making him realize that Billiam, for sure, doesn't like him either, but it was nothing to him since he was used to those responses. Then he ordered them to send him a message when they arrived, to which they replied yes. A moment later, he threw a bottle of liquid at the huge monster in front of them, which made a huge explosion and made the monster growl in pain. The item he threw was called Tears of Salamander with an effect of 3,000 true damage, but it was an overpriced item made with expensive materials. He thinks it was really overpriced, but with 3,000 true damage with no cast, he'll take it any day. Then the system pops up in front of him, making him think that it's worked. He sees that he has reached level 80, so the main god Ariel brings him to the secret room. He was excited because it was the 4th level quest and saw the Demi-Lick, Immerse, with 32,000 health points welcoming them as his prey. But he also knew that he had to clear the 4th level before they arrived at West headquarters. He looked at Immerse, knowing that Lick monsters are difficult to deal with. But he thinks the Lick in front of him seemed stupid and slow. But then, Immerse used his stone cause magic, making Arsha's foot turn to stone and used Icircle Lance spell to attack him, which made him shocked. He panicky wonders if Immerse cast before they got into their stances, and Arsha worriedly tries to run toward him. But he notices that Arsha is late, and he needs to dodge. But even though he tries, he still gets hit in the shoulder, making him shout in pain. Immerse laughingly told him that he can hear his bones getting crushed and his flesh being torn apart. He was on the ground, shaking in pain while he thought he dodged it and that he couldn't think straight because of the pain he felt. Also, he was annoyed at Immerse laughing because he felt like he heard Immerse laugh from somewhere. But then he remembered Cedric, making him pissed, and he forced himself to stand up while Immerse laughingly told him to stand still. Then Immerse used his fireball to attack him, but he just dodged it while running forward with Arsha in front. A second later, they appeared near Immerse, then he used his heal magic to attack Immerse, making Immerse's health points drop to 29,000. He ordered Arsha not to give Immerse time to cast, to which Arsha replied yes. He knows that the best way to go against a Lick without a priest. Then he enchanted their equipment with the holy attributes and continuously attacked Immerse with it, knowing that the solution was holy attribute beat up. Immerse, who was being attacked, asked them why they were doing physical damage with a staff while sneakily casting and cast a firewall, which released a huge wall of fire. Immerse says that if he can distance himself with it, he can win. But then, he appears in front of Immerse, making Immerse shocked and telling him that he was a freak from running through the fire. But he just told Immerse to die and smashed his weapon on Immerse's head while calling Immerse a Cedric-looking bastard. Hours later, the system showed that he completed the Lucky Encounter quest level 4, but he was gasping in pain on the ground. Arsha dropped her shield and worriedly ran toward him. Then Arsha grabbed one of the elixirs while he is remembering that they say he can't feel pain because of adrenaline during a fight. But as soon as the fight is over, he can feel it all. Arsha put the elixir in his mouth, and he slowly healed while he thinks that the servant opened the master's inventory by her own will, which means Arsha is really special. Then he thanked Arsha and told her that he felt much better. Then the system showed that he met the requirement to unlock the next floor of the tower, so it unlocked Lucas's 5th floor of the tower. Then it transported them to the 5th floor of the tower, and he immediately ran to the chest waiting for him. He excitedly opened it, saying they should see what the rewards were this time. The system showed that he acquired 500 billion loots and acquired all-around glasses. He wondered what it was and knew it couldn't be random since it's a gift from Archmage Lucas. He opened the glasses' detailed description and saw that it was glasses with analysis, observation, clairvoyance, and enhanced vision. It analyzes a living thing or object's use, purpose, and stats. It verifies the emotions of a living being and the truthfulness of a conversation. It can see through an obstacle, and it can see something at a distance of hundreds of meters to several kilometers away. He thinks he can see who are allies or enemies, which means it was a useful item for a doubtful person like him. Also, because he completed the quest, the 4th circle is generating for him. The next day, at West Headquarters, the man asked if it was the second son of the Lawrence family because he thought the bigger one would come from the Lawrence family. The other man replied that his name was Cedric or something, and he heard Cedric got everyone's attention at an early age because of his talent. But then, the man replied that it was probably the younger one, not Cedric, because he heard Adrian became a fool after eating poison. Without them knowing that he can hear them, he happily told them that indeed he was the younger one who ate the poison. One of the men told him that he doesn't really see a fool and can't trust rumors after all. Then one of the men introduced himself as Viscount Evans, the local headquarters chief of staff, and the other man introduced himself as Viscount Miller, the headquarters support chief of staff. He bowed respectfully and told them that it was his honor to meet both of them. Evans looked at the monitor and asked him to confirm if their Viscount's troops were 5 vanguards and 50 knights. He replied that it was correct and told them that it was 5 vanguards, 50 knights, and 1,000 soldiers. Evans told him that he didn't have to report about the soldiers because that war will end with just vanguards. He just smiled, but the truth is he can't believe they're treating elites armed with artifacts like this. He knows that vanguards are monsters that only great wizards of the 7th circle or above can handle. So sadly, what Evans was saying is all true, and he remembers that Archduke Lucas was the one who made the vanguard system. Evans told him that Lawrence's army had been organized as the 2nd Independent Brigade under the command of the 3rd Division, so he should make sure to look after Division Commander Earl Otis as the Brigadier. He politely replied yes, knowing that Earl Otis was the Great Lord of the East. After that, he told everyone that Lawrence's army had been organized as the 2nd Independent Brigade and that they should move while hoping that this one had some elasticity. A week later, inside the game, he was excitedly thinking that Commander Otis was the best, while Arsha was busy hunting monsters behind him. He thinks the best superior is an absent superior and remembers a man reporting to him that Commander Otis would be commuting back and forth with teleports until the war begins, making him wonder if Otis was commuting while leaving his army there when war could happen at any time. He knows that Otis's actions were absurd, but it was good for him because it allowed him to play the game without any concerns. While he was busy looking at his stats, Arsha called him to report to him that someone came into the room, making him shocked, and immediately logged out of the game. When he pulled out the game gadget, he saw Arsha stopping Dalton, who was wondering where that strength was coming from Arsha. He wore his glasses while wondering why Dalton walked in there, then he looked at Dalton while wearing his glasses and saw that Dalton's status was horny. He walked closer to Dalton and told him that he better explain what was going on there. Dalton told him that he was concerned about his health as a guard since he had been in the game for too long, and then that girl came to him, but he just kicked Dalton's knee, making Dalton kneel and shocked. He just reminded Dalton that he told him to message him if something happens, and he has Arsha next to him, always on standby, so he should give him a better excuse. Then he firmly told Dalton that he came into the commander of the brigade and the Lord Deputy's room without permission, then asked him why and if he was going to assassinate him. Dalton shouted that it was too far, asked him who did he think he was, and told him that he was the Vanguard. He kicked Dalton's knee again while telling him that he has to convince him and called him a schmuck, making the 3 knights behind him shocked. He asked Arsha to tell him what exactly happened, and she replied that Dalton tried to separate her from him. He asked Arsha if she was saying that Dalton tried to drag her somewhere, and she replied that he was correct. Dalton angrily asked him if he was framing him right now and if he was doubting the Vanguard because of that woman who came from nowhere while he was getting something from Arsha. He grabbed the knife near Arsha while thinking that Dalton is a real piece of shit and noticed that the knights who had just come up there were probably with Dalton. But he told Dalton that it was a violation of military discipline and it was mutiny, so he needed to receive suitable punishment. Then he pointed the knife at Dalton's chest and ordered him to take 1 step forward. But Dalton still teasingly asked him if he was serious while the knights tried to calm him down. He kept it down not because he was a good person but because he wanted to stay alive, and he knew that it was somewhere Anna couldn't keep watch over him, which means he had no reason to back down. So he told him that his ass should the one who calmed down and knows that it was a great time to show them, and firmly repeated to Dalton that he said to take 1 step forward. Meanwhile, outside, someone in a panic called Billiam and informed him that Adrian urgently required his presence. The knight then informed Billiam that Adrian intended to execute Dalton, so they needed to act swiftly. This frustrated Billiam because he felt like Adrian was giving him orders and he couldn't fathom what was happening. Upon his arrival in the room, a knife flew towards Billiam, but he skillfully caught it, noticing that it was covered in blood. Adrian angrily questioned Billiam about why he hadn't hurried, but Billiam remained silent and saw Dalton in pain on the floor. Billiam inquired about the situation, and Dalton responded that a knight harassing a girl made no sense to him. Dalton then asked for Billiam's opinion, leaving him shocked. Billiam, filled with fury, questioned the knights about their actions. He bowed to Adrian, apologized, and explained that it was due to his own shortcomings. Billiam then kicked the injured Dalton on the ground, relieving him of his duty, collecting Dalton's armor, and ordering his imprisonment. He declared that the 3 knights who allowed Dalton in were also accomplices and would be sent to jail. Billiam told Adrian that he wouldn't entertain any disputes as he was in charge. Adrian responded that it wasn't an earldom and that they couldn't use the room due to the blood scent. He decided to move to the next room and instructed the servants to clean up. Billiam wondered if this was Adrian's true nature but then smiled, thinking it must be difficult to suppress it. Later, while playing a game and facing continuous enemy attacks, Adrian retaliated while Arsha shielded him. He noticed that the enemies kept targeting his blind spots while maintaining their distance. Their opponent was a corrupted knight named Zenit, who currently had 12,800 health points out of 45,000. Their quest was Lucky Encounter level 5, with a requirement of level 120, and defeat the corrupted knight, Zenit. As a reward, they gained access to the 6th floor of Manuel Lucas's tower. Suddenly, Zenit pushed Arsha aside and charged toward Adrian. He told Adrian to die while launching a sword at him, but Adrian skillfully dodged in time to avoid it. This left Zenit confused, and he was shocked when he saw something coming towards him. Arsha then forcefully slammed her shield into Zenit's face, and Adrian activated his magic power, ultimately defeating Zenit. Zenit sighed defeatedly and mentioned that Adrian was just a tool for his own growth. Then the system showed him that he unlocked the 6th floor of Manuel Lucas's tower, and acquired 2 trillion loots, which is too much to deposit in an account or convert into online currency. It made him think that it's always great to see such rewards. The system then popped up in front of him once again, showing that he acquired Istro's staff, robe, armor, shield, a short sword, and an arming sword. He thought the robe and staff were the only equipment for a wizard, and the rest were for Arsha. He believed it was always good to have more gear and knew that Archduke Lucas wouldn't provide ordinary weapons either. A moment later, the knight seemed shaken and excused himself. He asked the knight what was wrong, and the knight replied that he felt a strange energy. He assured the knight that he was just checking on artifacts, so there was no need to worry. The knight replied that he understood and left, leaving him to examine the items in front of him. He then retrieved a sword from his inventory, realizing it was the force sword that vanguards mainly used. He knew that anyone could temporarily use Vanguard's power if they charged it with an aura-like battery. Vanguard's force equipment amplified the knight's aura, and unlike mana, aura couldn't be artificially created. He guessed that maybe Wizard's equipment also had that feature. He noticed that Istro's staff and robe had special skills related to aura storage, which shocked him. He figured out why everyone wanted Archduke Lucas's fate. 2 weeks later, he realized it had been 2 weeks since he had been appointed as the representative of the Lawrence family. He led the army at the front lines against the Croatian Empire. He told the knights that he didn't need guards, to which they all replied with agreement. The tense atmosphere that felt like war could break out at any moment seemed to have diminished. They had been just sitting there, but everyone was still apprehensive of him after the Dalton incident. He thought it was a good thing he had shown them who he was. However, one odd thing was Billiam's attitude towards him, which had turned friendly. He always noticed that Billiam was curious and cautious around him. He guessed it didn't really matter since he could focus on the game without any interference. Then he looked at Arsha, who now had the status of happy. He was confused because he had never seen that before. He wondered if she was happy because they had gone out for a walk, making him think of her like a puppy. Seeing her, he realized that even a homunculus had emotions, and he still didn't know much about her. Her individuality was weak, so he believed she definitely had likes and dislikes. He covered his face as leaves flew around them and saw a beautiful view in front of him. Then he looked at Arsha and saw that she was very happy, which made him silently laugh, leaving Arsha confused. A moment later, they reached their base, and he told Arsha that they should go for walks more often, to which she agreed. But then, a man confronted him, and he asked the man if there was a problem. Suddenly, the man shyly asked him if he would like a drink, if he didn't mind. He noticed that the man's name was Lopez, with a status of embarrassed and awkward. Then he noticed two other knights laughing behind them, making him understand what was going on. He asked Lopez if did they tell him to do that, while pointing to the two knights behind him. However, he thought there was no reason for him to go along with it, so he walked away, telling Lopez that he had no interest in it. But then, he stopped walking and asked Lopez why he became a knight. Lopez apologized for disrespecting him and said he didn't think it was necessary. However, he didn't mean it that way because it was the first time he had seen someone with more than two exceptional talents, other than a homunculus. He knew that Lopez had a very high aptitude for mana and rare traits, making him wonder why Lopez was serving other knights. But he thought it wasn't his problem. He then apologized and told Lopez that he could have been more successful if he became a wizard. This left Lopez shocked and confused as he told the other knights to stop bothering him. When he arrived in his room, he thought it was a waste not to get involved with Lopez because he didn't want any problems. However, Lopez's talent was going to waste. He also believed that if Lopez could use magic along with the Vanguard's force equipment, Lopez could become a magic swordsman. But he knew that having talent didn't guarantee success. Nevertheless, Lopez had become a knight at an early age, so there was a chance. If he could recruit Lopez, it would be great. The problem was Earl Otis because Alan Lopez was a knight in a different earldom. He needed Otis's permission to recruit Lopez, which made him wonder if he should bribe Otis. He thought it wasn't a bad choice, considering Otis's personality. He didn't know how useful high and very high talents were, but he knew he needed to start building his influence, and now was the best time, as he was away from the earldom. Also, he knew what to do next and told Arsha that they would be busy. On the other hand, Lopez was walking in the corridor when he remembered Adrian telling him that he could be successful if he became a wizard instead. He thought that at first, he just believed Adrian was an arrogant aristocrat. But for Adrian to think he should have become a wizard instead of a knight, he was also considering it. Then he informed his commander, Otis, that he came as per his orders. He walked inside the room and asked Otis if he was looking for him. He was thinking that he knows rumors are not always right, but if it's to that degree, it is a bit scary. Otis warmly welcomed him, and he saw Adrian sitting in front of his commander, making him wonder why Otis had called him. Otis told him that he probably already knew, but the man in front of him was the representative of the Viscount of the Lawrence family, Brigadier Adrian Lawrence. Then Otis told him that from then on, he would serve Adrian as his lord, which left him confused. Adrian remembered that in his past life, when China lost to Korea in a soccer game, one fan asked why they couldn't find 11 good soccer players when China has a population of 1.4 billion. Then someone replied that it was because the Chinese Messi or the Chinese Ronaldo is shoveling in a farm somewhere. So he thinks that no matter how much potential someone has, it wouldn't matter if there was no system that could bring out their potential. He looked at the room full of people and asked who could have thought that so many people were on the wrong path. He saw Earl Otis's unsuccessful knight, Alan Lopez, a peasant-turned-laborer, Barbara Henderson, one of the only soldiers who could play an instrument and became a trumpeter, Eric Jones, a daring boy who got caught trying to sell adult magazines to the army, Nicole Brown, a maid from the neighboring army, Linda Noah, and more. He knows that they each have amazing talents, but those geniuses chose the wrong path and therefore achieved nothing in their lives. Linda excused herself from him and asked him if he really thought she could be a wizard because during the test, it showed a negative result. He told her that the testing equipment must have had problems, but she still couldn't believe it. He noticed that Linda's mana was very high, and her learning ability and intelligence were also high. He knows that to recruit Linda, he had to hand over 400,000 in bribes and even a down payment, but he also knows that nobody would understand his actions right now. Being doubtful is understandable, and they are just doing what they are told because he was paying. Barbara told Linda that there was no need to be doubtful and just follow her master's orders. He saw that Barbara's physical ability was very high, and her aura was strong. Then he remembered that Barbara came with Nicole Brown to train in sword aura and had a special talent. He believes Barbara almost wastes his life by doing only labor, and he doesn't know why. However, Barbara listens to him well. Then he asked them if they chose their outfits and told them they were not in the barracks but in the royal palace, which is 100 kilometers away from the barracks. He noticed that everyone was somewhat frenzied. He thinks it was probably their first time in a luxury clothing store. Then someone told him that he'd pick it, and he told him that it fit him well. Eric Jones holds significant political power, his administrative power is high, and his trade is being a smooth talker. Eric tells him that